Daughter crashed a wedding dressed as a goth vampire, with a friend who blended in, leaving my wife fuming about the drama. I, male 48, needed some input. My wife, Linda F40, was the maid of honor for my cousin Susan F38. We've been together for 10 years, married for 7, and we have 2 children together, male 5, F4, along with my stepdaughter, Tiffany F16. Tiffany is very goth/emo. She pretty much only ever wears black. Even her pajamas will at least have evil Hello Kitty on them. Linda is very detail and image oriented and can be a bit of a micromanager. She gets very hung up on weddings. She was a bit of a bridezilla at ours, and I joked that Susan had made her maid of honor because she needed a bridal attack dog. She wasn't amused and I stopped making that joke. In the time leading up to the wedding, my wife was fighting with Tiffany over what Tiffany would wear to the wedding. Linda wanted her to dress normal, and Tiffany refused. Linda ultimately gave her an ultimatum to pick out an acceptable dress or she would just pick one for her. Tiffany still refused to budge, and this ended up with Linda going out on her own and buying a peach dress that was completely outside of Tiffany's style and telling her that this was what she was wearing to the wedding. The day of the wedding, Linda's maid of honor duties had her with the wedding party super early in the morning and gone all day. I was going to meet her there along with my stepdaughter. I dropped off our younger kids with my eldest daughter. I did a couple of quick errands, and I got back to our house just in time to leave if everything went smoothly. When I got there, Tiffany was not wearing the peach dress, but instead she was wearing a fancy black dress that was much more like what she normally wears. Lace sleeves, kind of a corset thing going on, longer in the back than in the front, basically what I would have expected her to wear to a wedding. I asked her if this is what her mom said she could wear, and she said not to worry about it and that it was too late to change anyway. I tried telling her that she should change into the other dress, but she said that there wasn't enough time, and changing dresses would take forever, and furthermore that her makeup wouldn't match the other dress anyway. Tiffany does spend a lot of time on makeup, and while I'm not an expert I guess even I could tell that her hair, makeup, and accessories wouldn't match the other dress, even if there was time to change. We were already on the verge of running late, so really there was nothing I could do about it. We just went with Tiffany and the dress she was wearing. We arrived at the ceremony, and Linda was kind of preoccupied with helping Susan and all that, but she low-key grilled me about what Tiffany was wearing. And I just shrugged and explained to her the situation as it was. She was already wearing this dress, already had her hair and makeup done, makeup wouldn't match the other dress and there was no time to change it all, etc., and nothing to be done about it at this point. She didn't have a whole lot of time to hang around and talk with me with everything going on. Tiffany got some looks, but she always does. She does stand out a bit, as you might expect. People seemed mostly fine with her though. Tiffany rode with me to the reception. She had been studiously dodging her mother as much as possible. Shortly after we were there, I noticed Tiffany's best friend Bethany F16 hanging around in a slightly more understated goth dress. Apparently she drove herself and Tiffany helped her crash the party. It was a big venue with a lot of guests and she was pretty easy to ignore. My wife and my cousin both work for my dad's company, so I was at a table with him and some of their other co-workers. He noticed that Tiffany had snuck Bethany in and alerted me, when he elbowed me, pointed, and said, "They're multiplying." Throughout the reception, Tiffany and Bethany were taking photos of each other, mostly Bethany taking them of Tiffany. Her mom got on her again, but with the wedding planner somehow Mia, she couldn't devote too much attention to them. She told me to handle them and that they were drawing too much attention. They agreed to tone it down, and they were much more subtle/subdued after that. Bethany had a collapsible camera stand stick thing she had been setting up around different places and she either stopped using it or stayed out of the way more. Both of them seemed to just stay out from underfoot too much. Linda gave me a few looks during the wedding itself and the reception, but she was very busy and she seems to have put on a face to keep from adding to drama during the day, but she laid into me on the way home. She was upset that I let Tiffany come to the wedding looking like a vampire and drawing attention to herself. She said I knew she was supposed to wear the other dress and not be in so much makeup. To hear her tell about it, Tiffany was a total spectacle, and her appearance was totally inappropriate. Linda said that it's never appropriate for a guest to wear black to a wedding, that Tiffany's dress was too eye-catching, that she was embarrassed and mortified, and that I let Tiffany do whatever she wants. She said that I shouldn't have let Tiffany and her friend turn the wedding into a cosplay event and the reception into their private photo shoot. In my defense, yes, I knew they had been fighting about Tiffany's dress and makeup, but I had been doing errands that Linda gave me before I got home, and when I got home, Tiffany was already dressed. We didn't have a whole lot of time, and I know from experience that she can take quite a while changing clothes or doing makeup. As I mentioned, she said that her makeup wouldn't match the other dress anyway. She didn't draw that much attention at the wedding. Sure, she got some looks. She always does, but it was nothing major. Her and her friend hardly turned the reception into a private photo shoot. Mostly it was just Bethany taking some photos. Tiffany did kind of awkwardly hang around the photographer until he took some pictures of her, but it wasn't enough to derail anything. By that point it seemed like he was just looking for interesting things to shoot, and I guess she fit the bill. The girls cooled it with their own photo setups after I talked to them. Linda complained about Tiffany having a bouquet she was posing with, but she didn't even have that when we left the house. Bethany brought a bouquet of fake, black roses with her when Tiffany let her in, I guess. I'm pretty sure I've seen that same bouquet before. Susan didn't even care that much if she noticed at all. I've tried to tell Linda lots of times that lots of things don't need to be a problem unless you decide to make them a problem. I've also told her that you have to pick your battles with teenage girls, and that the more you try to fight with them the more you end up getting drama and pushback. I'm a bit more experienced in this area. I have 2 adult daughters, 28 and 22, who are both total daddy's girls even to this day. Tiffany is Linda's oldest kid and was her only one until our kids together. I've always had a great relationship with Tiffany even since she was a little kid, and part of that is probably because I don't pick fights with her like her mom does. Linda says that I let her do whatever she wants, but that's not true. I'm very strict with her about her grades and her chores. She used to leave huge messes in the bathroom of makeup and hair stuff. Linda fought with her about it, while I just sort of calmly explained that everyone needs to clean up after themselves, and if she's going to make a mess in there she has to be the one to clean it, and it was fine. She'll babysit for me, when I ask, but again her mom always turns it into some kind of power struggle that turns into an argument. She'll try to micromanage and add additional tasks, while I'll just ask her if she can watch her little sister/brother for a bit, and if she says okay, then that's good enough. Sometimes, if I need to bribe her a little, I bribe her a little. As far as her being embarrassed in front of her coworkers, they all thought Tiffany was cute. And even after Bethany crashed, it was more just something to occasionally talk about than anything anyone was scandalized over. We made a few jokes about the Goth invasion and that was it. I was around them and my dad way more than she was that night anyway, and no one minded. She even spent some time talking about makeup with my mother. So, long story long, my wife is still getting after my stepdaughter about what she wore to the wedding, being moody about it and causing unnecessary tension, while I've just told her that this doesn't matter and it doesn't have to be a thing. She's had some of her friends, notably not the bride herself, my cousin, nor any of her coworkers who were actually at the wedding, chime in about how I'm an asshole for this, but I just feel like she's making something out of nothing. Am I the asshole for letting my stepdaughter wear a black dress to a wedding? Update 1. Just a brief update in case anyone was wondering. I had a talk with Linda, and we covered a lot of the same points that people brought up here in the thread. I had already mentioned to her that getting into fights over things that don't really matter only causes tension and resentment between her and Tiffany, but I also emphasized the fact that Tiffany is almost an adult and that pushing her away might eventually make her stay away. Linda seemed to take it in when I emphasized that she has to let Tiffany be who she wants and that she can't really force the matter as if she were a little kid. We got together with both of our parents over Mother's Day, and my own mom told Linda that she thought Tiffany's outfit had been very pretty, that she admired the effort Tiffany puts into her look, and that Tiffany was a charming young lady as usual. She and I noted that it would have been much more unpleasant to have a miserable, sulky teenager being uncomfortable and resentful throughout the night. Linda's own mom was a little bit more judgmental, but she mostly held her tongue beyond the few looks and offhand remarks. Of course, everyone already knew that her views on fashion were a lot more conventional, and that she thinks I'm too lax and permissive. We don't actually see my wife's parents that often, just a few times a year. If not for the wedding, this might have been the first time seeing them since at least around Thanksgiving. But I did note, to Linda, that given the choice, Tiffany clearly spends more time with my mom than with her own biological grandmother. I did have Tiffany go ahead and apologize to Susan, just in case, and I chatted with her briefly as well. Susan hadn't initially noticed/known that Bethany wasn't invited. It was a big wedding at a big venue, and she wasn't too fussed over it. Apparently she was still within the margins of the planning. I don't mind coddling Tiffany a little bit, and I just try to be a good dad. I am the only father that she has. My wife's late husband passed away a couple of years before we met. I could tell that she needed a dad, and I was glad to treat her the same as I had my older girls. I guess it's not always easy being a step-parent, but Tiffany and I have always gotten along, and I love her. Linda can be a bit type A, and she was definitely super stressed about the wedding day. She ended up with a lot on her plate, practically needing to step into the wedding planner's shoes. The planner's son was in the hospital. He's totally fine now, probably an allergic reaction. It was a wonder that the day went as smoothly as it did. She was hugely responsible for that. She ultimately admitted that I probably did the right thing, but I told her that every girl wants to look pretty and feel confident, and you should almost always let them not do a thing that's how it's going to make them look and feel. It was also worth pointing out that Tiffany would have looked wild in the pictures in a peach dress with her goth makeup, more so if she was clearly in a rotten mood. The two of them seemed to have patched things up quite a bit, and we all had a really nice brunch together. Update 2. It's been a little over a week since Mother's Day and brunch, which I'd said went well, and it genuinely had, or so I thought. Linda and Tiffany had been mostly getting along, they were texting a bit, and Tiffany had even let Linda help her pick out a studded belt that actually got her approval. It looked like détente. And then, enter the wild world of wedding photos. See, our family hadn't really seen much from the official photographer yet. Susan, the bride, is a bit of a social media maven, and when she got the first proofs back, she threw them into a big shared album and sent the link to everyone. And you know how it goes, suddenly everyone is going through and tagging, sharing, and commenting, especially in this one, enormous, family group chat that I'm honestly terrified to open half the time. There are all these stunning, posed pictures in golden hour light, people clinking glasses, flower girls twirling, and right there in the middle of them, Tiffany and, unmistakably, Bethany, posing like they've just been recruited for the cover of Vogue, Gothic edition. Black lace. Corsetry. Tiffany with her dark bouquet, both of them with these elaborate eye makeup situations. There's a one of both girls looking dead serious with a black lace umbrella they somehow got their hands on. There's another where the photographer caught Tiffany peering over the black bouquet like some kind of Victorian specter. They were fun pictures, even I can admit that. It wasn't just Susan sharing the photos though, Tiffany and Bethany started posting them too. Bethany's Instagram is public, and as it turns out, she follows about half the kids in our school district, plus several teachers. Soon enough, Linda is getting emails, actual emails, from a couple of parents who are concerned about Tiffany's influences and whether events like this are appropriate for underage guests. I contend this is just garden variety suburban drama, but to Linda it was the apocalypse. And then, she gets wind that a PTA concerned parents thread is discussing our family. Tiffany is mostly unfazed, if anything, she seems proud of her local infamy. She starts joking about being the goth wedding crasher and makes fun of the emails at dinner. She even gets a few new Instagram followers out of it, mostly kids from the school she says never used to talk to her. But then, a couple of afternoons later, Linda bursts into our home office waving her phone around in a full tilt. Did you know Tiffany and Bethany are planning a promposal for someone at the wedding venue? I stare at her, wondering if she's actually speaking English. Turns out, after all the attention, Bethany decided to ask out her longtime crush in a super dramatic, fully costumed Addams Family themed promposal at the same venue. Tiffany is going to record it. They've even been talking with the event coordinator Susan used, and got her blessing. Plus, they wrangled a discount since the girls have become local icons after the Instagram spread. Worried about the school drama, Linda felt compelled to reach out to Bethany's mother and the school guidance counselor. I'll admit, I did try, and fail, to keep her from sending a long, starchy email to the guidance office about student image awareness and misinterpretation of creative expression. Tiffany was livid, and for 48 hours we had near total freeze-out levels of teen angst. She started refusing to do anything Linda asked, and even sent Susan some faintly snarky TikToks from the wedding with captions about aesthetic oppression. But Susan absolutely saved the day, again. She ended up posting a gigantic thank you message about how cool it was to have all personalities and styles shining at her wedding and specifically called out Tiffany and Bethany for making my photos infinitely chicer than anything Pinterest ever promised. Her post picked up steam and people started, for once, focusing on the fun and kindness of the event rather than the perceived drama. Even more surprising, Susan's wedding photographer reached out to us directly. Turns out, she wants to do a young goth creatives portfolio for her website, and asked if Tiffany and Bethany wanted to model for her. She said she'd pay them for a few hours of their time. Tiffany nearly fainted with excitement, and Linda, looking like she'd been hit by a truck, reluctantly agreed, especially after realizing the photographer's portfolio might be good for Tiffany's creative arts college applications. Meanwhile, Bethany's Addams promposal went semi-viral, for our small town, anyway. Their creative little moment became the most talked about thing at the school for a week. My younger two became mini celebrities for being the goth girls' siblings, and somehow, after all the hand-wringing, Linda is now fielding parents at school who are suddenly so glad their kids made friends with such confident, interesting young women, and asking if Tiffany could help their daughters with makeup. For now, I think Linda's starting to see the value in letting go a bit. She's even begun asking Tiffany for eyeliner tips, and I caught the two of them giggling together over some YouTube makeup tutorial. I can't say the drama is truly over. We have another family wedding at the end of summer, and Linda has already started casting worried looks at Tiffany's closet, but for this round, at least, I think we ended up better off. More respect, more understanding, and a lot more excellent photos. Update 3. Well, as predicted, the wedding photo saga did not mark the end of our family's accidental foray into goth-tinged social stardom. In fact, it seemed to have poured gasoline on an already smoldering fuse. The wedding photos kept coming. Susan commissioned even more prints for what she called her unfiltered album, and the photographer sent over a flash drive with all the candid shots. Tiffany and Bethany became minor celebrities at their school, which I'd expected, but what I failed to predict was how people outside our immediate circles would latch onto the story. Here's where things started getting interesting. About a week after the promposal, I get a call from a reporter, a real one, not just the student newspaper, who'd seen those viral posts. She wanted to write a local human interest piece on the rise of expressive teens who aren't afraid to be themselves in conservative spaces. At first, I laughed and told her she should talk to the girls directly, thinking it would blow over. Linda was mortified. She begged Tiffany to decline. What if my boss sees? But both kids were game. The article was surprisingly positive. Tiffany's quotes were strong and thoughtful, and it ran with a photo of them, lacy sleeves and all, umbrella perched jauntily over one shoulder. The day the story ran, the school guidance counselor, the same poor soul Linda had emailed, called and said that both girls would be honored at the spring assembly for creative courage. Tiffany rolled her eyes, but I could tell she was flattered, and, here's the kicker, so was Linda. I swear she nearly cried when she read the story aloud at dinner. She even texted the link to her sister with a note, "See what our girls can do?" But of course, nothing gold can stay. The summer wedding that loomed in the distance, the one for Linda's other cousin, Melissa, grew into a full-blown battleground over guest attire. The invitation included an ominous light and floral colors preferred clause in neat script. I steeled myself for a round two. Linda, perhaps emboldened by her moments of newfound acceptance, suggested Tiffany might compromise with a pastel dress and statement accessories. Tiffany, for once, didn't roll her eyes. She grinned and said, "What, like a black corsage?" They ended up shopping together, and miracle of miracles, they bought a cream dress with black lace detail and a velvet choker. From across the mall, I watched Linda holding the bag and Tiffany carrying an iced coffee, chatting like equals. That was new. Crisis averted? Ha, not quite. Enter the old guard. Linda's mother, ever the traditionalist, began her campaign. She called the dress funeral chic. At a family barbecue, she pulled me aside and said, "Isn't it time for Tiffany to dress like a girl her age?" I told her, as politely as I could, that I was proud of Tiffany for expressing herself. She told me I was enabling a phase. I told her the only phase I wanted for Tiffany was one where she looked in the mirror and felt proud of herself. Linda stood up for her daughter, and that night, over dishes, she finally confessed something to me, that all this fuss wasn't really about the dresses, or attention, or even her own embarrassment. It was about fear, of being a bad parent, of letting go, and of having her daughter grow up on her own terms in a world that isn't always kind. About 2 weeks before the next wedding, the photographer from Susan's event followed up, not just about her portfolio, but because a regional teen magazine, think Rookie Mag for the small town set, wanted Tiffany and Bethany to model for a spread about alt looks for prom season. Linda nearly fainted. "Is this safe?" But after meeting the editor, a pink-haired, tattooed millennial who wore combat boots over her suit and talked about empowering girls, she agreed. That Saturday, I watched from the edge of the set as Tiffany and Bethany posed for shots in elaborate vintage dresses, all swirling tulle, sharp lines, and artfully smudged eyeliner. Linda stood next to me and whispered, "I wish I were that brave at her age." I squeezed her hand. By the time Melissa's wedding arrived, Tiffany and Bethany were local icons, a weird, accidental phenomenon. But more important to me, Tiffany and Linda had found a way to coexist, even support one another. Tiffany even let her mom retouch her lipstick, black, yes, but still lipstick, in the venue bathroom. They posed together for a photo, cheek to cheek, both grinning, both looking proud in their own way. I'm not naive enough to think we'll never argue about clothes or appearances again. But watching Linda see Tiffany for who she really was, and watching Tiffany recognize that as acceptance, it was worth every extra gray hair in my beard. Even Linda's mom finally relented that at least the black lace was tasteful. So, the story isn't over, but it's become something much richer than goth at a wedding. It's about letting go, learning, and actually growing up alongside your kids. And just this morning, Tiffany asked if Linda and I wanted to see the first draft of her college application essay. It opens with that first wedding photo, her friend by her side, dressed in head-to-toe black and smiling, finally, unapologetically, for the camera. Update 4. I can't say I ever expected my family drama to develop its own running plot lines like a sitcom, but here we are, and if anything, things have only gotten more theatrical. If you thought the Gothic wedding photo saga was the height of the absurd, you are severely underestimating both the internet and, shockingly, Linda's hidden creative side. To lay the groundwork, since the last wedding, Tiffany and Bethany have become minor local celebrities. After the magazine shoot, they got asked to join a Teen Voices subcommittee for the regional library's summer programs. Apparently, the library was desperate to appeal to the TikTok crowd, and someone decided that goths were the bleeding edge of youth outreach. Watching the two of them explain internet slang to a librarian with a reading is cool. Brooch remains a highlight of my year. Linda, meanwhile, had started leaning in. She even let me catch her binge-watching makeup tutorials on Tiffany's phone and got into a mini obsession with Victorian glass jewelry after Tiffany showed her a few online hauls. If this was what embracing your child's individuality looked like, I wasn't complaining. But what really set things off this time wasn't anything my daughter wore. It was what she made. Enter the school's annual talent show. Tiffany and Bethany, emboldened by their recent notoriety, decided it was time to go all in, submitting an entry billed only as aesthetic outlaws, a multimedia spectacle. No one really knew what that meant, but word spread fast, and, yes, the show was live-streamed to the high school's new official TikTok channel, a recent, well-meaning PTA effort to seem current. Linda had several emergency text threads going with other parents about the risk of a wardrobe malfunction or vampire-themed scandal, but ultimately let it happen. The day comes. My parents and Linda's parents both turn up, my mom laughing, her mom clutching a program and looking like she smelled a thunderstorm. The lights dim. Tiffany and Bethany take the stage in their dramatic, elaborate black and red neo-Edwardian outfits. But, instead of the supernatural drama we half expected, they whip out recorders, the instrument, not tape decks, and launch into an absurdly competent, minor key mashup of Canon and D and the theme from the Addams Family. The kicker? Halfway through, the house lights come up to reveal half a dozen secret collaborators, other girls from school who'd been quietly assembling their own alt-fashion looks and practicing this performance during lunch period. Audience, delighted. Kids go wild, teachers laugh, and even Linda's rigid older cousin, still recovering from the last wedding, is audibly seen clapping along. There's not a black lipstick smear in sight. At the close, the group bows, and Tiffany gives a short speech about expression, acceptance, and how every weird kid deserves to stand out at least once in their life. I actually saw a few parents dabbing at their eyes, Linda included, though she blamed allergies. You'd think that would smooth things over, but nothing's ever quite that simple for us. Unbeknownst to anyone, the school's TikTok, which, again, keeps trying to go viral, shares a 15-second highlight reel featuring Tiffany, Bethany, and Linda posing backstage, Linda still in her work dress and heels, but with a ridiculous pair of Tiffany's studded black sunglasses for the camera. Overnight, it explodes. Mom embraces Goth daughter is suddenly a hashtag, and now we're getting DMs from strangers who want Linda and Tiffany to make a mom-daughter makeup challenge. I'm not sure what was more surreal, my wife being recognized at the grocery store, "Are you the Goth mom?" or her actually agreeing to appear in Tiffany's first Get Ready With Me TikTok. I still can't believe I know what that even means. Of course, that's when the shoe drops. Some school board members, classic old guard, weren't thrilled about all this unapproved Gothic rebranding. We got a sharply worded letter about safety of impressionable students and social media standards. Linda, now fully on team self-expression, actually fired off a passionate, and, to my amazement, well-written, email back, citing statistics on student self-esteem and referencing the positive reception at both events. Meanwhile, Tiffany, armed with her newfound sense of agency, a closet full of borrowed Victorian jewelry, and a semi-ironic following, floats through the drama with only occasional eye rolls, and more giggles with her mom than arguments. It all came to a head 2 nights ago, when Linda called a family council to discuss boundaries for future public appearances and to, her words, make sure we're a united front before someone accuses us of radicalizing the district's youth via eyeshadow. We actually talked, honestly and openly. Tiffany set herself the boundary of always looping us in on big public projects, Linda agreed to retire the guidance counselor email list unless truly necessary, and I, for my part, will be researching how to lock down our TikTok privacy settings with less embarrassment. Our last big surprise? The library asked Tiffany to co-host a summer workshop on alt-fashion through time, with Linda as her guest speaker on parenting through changing tastes. Linda's opening line? If you'd told me a year ago the best thing I could do for my daughter was hand her the liquid eyeliner with a smile, I wouldn't have believed you. Now, I can't imagine it any other way. So, here we are, once a battleground of peach versus black lace, our house is now a place where personal style isn't an act of rebellion but a bridge, often awkward, occasionally viral, but ours. And for the record, Tiffany is planning to wear a vintage black dress to the next family wedding, minus the corset, plus a necklace she and Linda found together. Peace, at least for now. And yes, Linda has started painting her own nails black. Just the once. But I caught her admiring her hands for hours after.